Well, welcome back, everyone. It is absolutely great to see you once again. I'm Orion. I'm your host. I'm autistic, and welcome along to this particular session with our Autism at Work Virtual Summit, where we're talking about neurodiversity employee resource groups. Now, this session will be moderated by Andrew Eddy, CEO of Untapped. But before I hand over to Andrew, well, you should know that you are able to actually submit text questions, okay, by simply typing your question into the Q&A panel. So on the right there, you'll see there's a little icon Q&A, and below that, I think there's an icon that says survey. So you can access that pane by clicking on the Q&A tab, and that's on the right-hand side of your screen. And I've said that 7 times now, so I hope that's got through. If your question is for a particular panelist, you just have to include the name of the panelist and your question. Now, other people's questions will appear in the Q&A pane. So once they've been approved by moderators, if you like their question, you think, oh, that's good, I don't have to write mine. You just got to give it a little thumbs up, okay? You can upvote it by clicking on the arrow beside it. And we'll try to answer as many questions as possible, depending on how many come through. We may not be able to get through all of them, but it is now time to introduce your esteemed moderator. We're going to get this session underway. Andrew Eddy, hello, and over to you, my friend.
Thank you, Orion. Great to be here. Welcome to everyone to this session. I'd like to introduce the members of our panel. So I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves and just talk a little bit about how they're involved in the organisation, their organisation's employee resource group or business resource group, and how it fits with their role. So I'm going to just ask Bich just to say a few words on that, and then we'll pass to Alicia and then to Nat. Thank you, Bich.
Thanks, Andrew. Hi, everyone. My name is Bich Jennings. I'm the GHD Australian ERG lead and chair for Australia. My story with neurodiversity really comes from my interest in understanding the perspective through the lens, the life lens of my husband, who's on the spectrum. He's known as high functioning, or what was labelled in the past as Asperger's. So that's one aspect of the reason why I'm involved with the ERG. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you. Alicia.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the session. I'm Alicia Jaeschke, and I'm a people business partner at GHD. I established our Neurodiversity Employee Resource Group in Victoria at the beginning of last year. And this is now a national group, and I continue to be a proud member of the team. Today, I'll be sharing my story and how I went from knowing very little about neurodiversity to how I went about building awareness and getting support from leadership to help put neurodiversity on the agenda. I'll also touch on how I went about establishing a neurodiversity employee resource group in our business.
Thank you, Alicia. Nat.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for spending some time with us today. My name is Nat Lyckowski, and I am a proud neurodivergent. I'm also the parent of a neurodivergent IT professional, and I am blessed to be IBM's Global Neurodiversity at IBM resource group. We call them BRGs, Business Resource Group, but it's kind of the same as an ERG. And I've been the co-chair since 2016 and happy to be on this journey.
Thank you, Nat. So Nat's joining us from Pennsylvania, and I think you've got some hurricane activity up there, so hopefully things will hold out. And Bich and Alicia are both in Melbourne. So we're now going to ask each of the people on the call, the panel members, to tell us a bit more about the ERG or BRG in their organisation and the journey that they've been on to get to where they are today. So I'm going to start with Alicia, who's going to talk about the journey that she's been on. Thank you, Alicia.
Thanks, Andrew. My story of how I got involved in neurodiversity started in 2018, and it really was by chance. A colleague had been invited to attend a neurodiversity hub workshop hosted by Swinburne Uni and wasn't able to attend. They asked if I wanted to go. I said yes, And then embarrassingly, I had to Google what neurodiversity was. Once Google had enlightened me, I thought to myself, how did I not know what neurodiversity was? I went along to the workshop feeling very out of my depth, but so interested to learn. I met and heard from a number of people who had implemented autism employment programs and people who had been a part of those programs, advocates and educators, and I was so inspired by all of these people, the passionate work that they were doing and the impact that they were having on autistic people to get meaningful employment, reaching their potential, and the positive flow that had on families and the community was really amazing. One of my biggest takeaways, and something that was continuously highlighted by the employment partners of the Neurodiversity Hub, was that every policy, every adaptation to business and management to support neurodiversity was a change that enhanced and added value to the organisation as a whole, not just for neurodivergent employees, but for everyone. Recruitment processes adapted for neurodivergent candidates in mind were more inclusive and better processes overall for everybody. Managers who had to work on their style and approach to effectively work with their neurodivergent employees became better managers overall. I heard these sentiments over and over, and it became clear to me that embracing neurodiversity made businesses quite simply better, and on so many fronts. So after the workshop, I left the workshop and not only blown away by the stories I had heard and the people I'd met, but also armed with some amazing contacts, including Andrew Eddy from Untitled, who's our moderator today, and Matt Ormiston, who had rolled out a successful neurodiversity program when he was at ANZ. And after the session, it's fair to say, I was feeling pretty fired up. I knew that GHD could be doing so much more to support neurodivergent employees and potential employees. I was determined to share with everyone that I knew what neurodiversity was, what other companies were doing to support autistic people and other neurodivergent individuals, and why I thought it was so important for us as a business to put neurodiversity on the agenda. Champions and advocates. Being a part of the people team, I talk to and have relationships with a lot of people in the business. So I did what I do best, and I talked some more, and I was passionate about sharing all the things that I'd learned about neurodiversity. I presented to our Inclusion and Diversity Council. I talked to my team. I talked to the managers I worked with. I did little things like share articles and videos, and I took notice of the people who were interested and soon connected with my colleagues who had a similar passion. I encouraged these people to come along with me to previous Autism Work Summits and other events. And before I knew it, we had a great team of passionate and enthusiastic people keen to make a difference. And one of those people was Bich, who's on the panel with me today. As I mentioned earlier, I had also connected with Andrew Eddy through the Neurodiversity Hub, and this ended up being a really important relationship for GHD and also for me. I'm sure many of you know Andrew and his amazing advocacy work and how generous he is with his time. He was able to arrange for some incredible autistic speakers like Paulette Penzbalto and John Marble, both previous keynote speakers at the Autism at Work Summit, to talk to our leaders in Victoria. This was a real turning point in building awareness and interest in neurodiversity in our business. After hearing Paulette's and John's stories, many of those leaders had the same newfound interest that I had after hearing those stories at the Neurodiversity Hub. Executive sponsorship. I was quick to capitalise after the buzz of our guest speakers and had generated and get some commitment from leaders to explore what more GHD could do to support neurodiversity. And I also realised that I needed some help to get this off the ground. My first stop was to seek an executive sponsor who could champion neurodiversity at the top. I was asked who I would recommend, and I remembered how engaged our Victorian GM, Dean McIntyre, had been hearing Paulette's story. And when I asked him if I could run with trying to build neurodiversity awareness in Victoria, he was very encouraging. So he was top of mind when I was asked the question. Dean gladly took on the role of executive sponsor, and this was such an exciting moment, and things really started to grow from here. Jack's story. It really seemed all of my talking was starting to pay off. I was contacted by one of our managers late in 2019, Patrick Maiden, who said that he'd been provided with a CV through his network. The CV belonged to Jack. Jack was a recently graduated mechanical engineer who was struggling to find work, let alone work in his field. Jack also happened to be autistic. Pat and I booked some time to talk to Jack. It was really very informal. We talked about his studies, what he was interested in, his hobbies, and he was very open about his autism and what that looked like for him. Jack was so switched on, and I was really determined to help him find the right opportunity. Part of me was also dismayed that this bright young engineering graduate had failed to secure work in his field already. I approached another manager, Peter Van Holst, to talk about Jack. Fortuitously, as it happened, Pete had attended a recent Autism at Work Summit with me, so was very engaged and supportive. I knew that Pete was also eager to bring on some fresh talent, and I thought that Jack's interest in studies aligned well with the work undertaken by the team. Pete was keen to speak with Jack, but also really worried that he didn't know enough about autism and supporting someone with autism to make it work. I said to Pete, let's just talk to Jack first and we can work the rest out from there. But to be honest, I was also a little bit worried about my own limitations and lack of experience in this area. Again, we had another informal conversation with Jack, and we all agreed that him initially coming on board a few days per week to see if it worked for everyone was the right approach. This gave Jack the time and flexibility to ease into corporate life at GHD and increase his hours when he felt ready. With Jack's support, we spoke to the team before he commenced and did some basic training on what neurodiversity was. And Andrew Eddy also put us in touch with some external neurodiversity coaches that could help us along the way. Where's Jack now? I'm really happy to share that Jack is still working with us today. He's a full-time permanent employee and is in his second year of our graduate program and doing such great work. Jack has also been very open about his autism, and he has generously shared his story with our business to help us raise awareness of autism at work. Jack's colleagues have been so moved by his story and in awe of his openness. It's certainly not Jack's responsibility to educate our employees, but him sharing his experiences has provided everyone with a very personal perspective, which is so impactful. Jack is also on the employee panel tomorrow, so I encourage you to tune in to hear him talk. There are some things that we would have done differently bringing Jack on board, and definitely some learnings we took away from the experience. We didn't have a perfect plan, but with the dedication of Jack, Pete and Jack's team leader, Mario, and getting some help from people who knew more than us, I'm so proud that we have been able to create an environment and structure where Jack has been able to thrive. Getting our ERG together. I wanted to bring together the passionate people that had a connection to neurodiversity that I had come across. I knew that a couple of other employee resource groups had been established in the business successfully and thought it could be a great way for us to keep momentum growing in neurodiversity awareness in the business. It really was as simple as me asking our executive sponsor, Dean, if I could go ahead and set this up. It was a quick yes, and away we went. Again, I didn't have much of a plan. I had the basic definition of what an ERG was and how they worked, and I was armed with a list of people I knew who could help make it work. In early 2020, our neurodiversity ERG came together. We started as a group of 6 people based in our Victorian business. After bringing the group together, I felt that it was really important that we appoint someone to take on the ERG lead role, someone who could be the face of the ERG and help drive it forward. Bich stepped up into the role, and the group really has gone from strength to strength under her leadership, and our ERG has now grown to a group of 23 people who are based in our offices all over Australia. The group is made up of a diverse group of members, both neurodivergent and neurotypical, and provide a wide range of perspectives and lived experiences. An ERG has also been set up in our North American business, and it's been so incredible to see these ERGs grow. Bich has done such a remarkable job leading our neurodiversity ERG, and we'll talk in a little bit more detail about what our ERG does and how it's structured. But before I finish up, I just wanted to share with you my key takeaways from my experience building neurodiversity awareness in a business and also setting up an ERG. Here are my 6 top tips for success. It was very hard to limit it to 6, so they are a little bit drawn out. But number 1 is to talk to people, generate interest, build awareness and education in simple ways like sharing articles. Encourage your colleagues to go to events like these and hunt out some potential champions and allies. 2, speak with people in other businesses who have neurodiversity programs and talk to them about how they went about building their programs and ERGs. 3, share people's stories. Having Paulette, John and Jack share their personal stories had a huge impact on our people and was instrumental in building awareness and support for neurodiversity in the business. Seek an executive sponsor who can help influence and advocate for neurodiversity at the top. Number 5, have trusted advisors who have experience and expertise in working with businesses around neurodiversity. The neurodiversity community is so generous. Take up those offers of support. And 6, you don't need to be an expert to build, support and create an ERG. I'm proof of that. You don't need a perfect plan, although I would recommend maybe having a better plan than I initially did. Find those passionate supporters, people who have lived experience and influencers, and just go for it. I'd just like to say that being involved in building GHD's neurodiversity awareness, the people that I've connected with and the positive impact that I can see our ERG making has hands down been the best experience I've had in my career. I'm thankful to GHD, who really has just let me run with it, and also to Andrew Eddy, who has been and continues to be our trusted advisor. Thank you.
Thanks, Alicia. Over to you, Bich.
Thanks so much, Andrew. And thanks, Alicia, for sharing the story. Where my story dovetails into Alicia's is at the Autism at Work Summit. Just prior to then, I was sitting at my desk and I registered for a GHD event that had invited John Marble to come along to speak, and I bumped into Alicia there. And we got talking about the journey that I had been on with my husband. And then she invited me along to the Autism at Work Summit, and that really opened my eyes to the potential that existed. As I mentioned, my ND interest stemmed from my husband. I've been with Sol for close to 18 years now. And as we were preparing for marriage, he picked up this book that was there explaining to neurotypical children how children on the spectrum thought differently. And he came running over to me and he said, we need to look into this. This book explains everything about why I'm different and why I felt on the outside my whole life. So that really piqued our interest and got us digging a little bit further, and is my personal reason as to why it's so important to have the conversations around neurodiversity at work. I've seen my husband go from strength to strength as well since that day. So the contrast to an environment that embraces him and his unique skills and talents versus places he's worked in the past, which really tried to fit him into a neurotypical's world, is quite a scary contrast. So going back to the ERG story, when Alicia asked me to chair the ERG, and at the time it was a small group in Victoria, I had some real reservations. I wasn't comfortable. I wasn't sure that I was suitably qualified, all these things. And thankfully, Sol had a bit of a chat with me and said, look, I hate to stand out. I don't like speaking in front of people. I don't even think my story is particularly interesting. But if I don't want to tell my story, and someone like you, who's quite comfortable stepping into the spotlight and sharing our journey, isn't going to do it, who's going to speak on my behalf? So this was a really important lesson for me in terms of allyship and the strength of allyship and where it can really take an ERG. So our ERG kicked off. COVID did slow us down a little bit. The whole world was really flipped upside down. So we kind of hadn't progressed as far as where we had liked in those first few months. But then in October, we decided to get together, reconvene the group, and really talk about where we wanted the ERG to go. So I might just share a few slides now with you and talk through some of those. So this is our ERG mission statement to support, empower and celebrate neurodivergent employees across Australia, to increase awareness, connections and opportunities that benefit in the benefits of having a neurodiverse workforce. So we tackled it like a real engineering problem, you know, our mission statement there down the bottom, and you'll see we really tried to define the problem, some of the barriers, some stakeholders, and work our way from left to right, identifying long-term goals to medium terms and then short-term goals. And after the October session, you know, people were really motivated, and we said, okay, let's get people to nominate for individual actions, and then they can champion those through and close them off. And as we tackle those actions, we can really meet our mission statement. We really struggled to get traction, and we had to go back to the drawing board. And it was great that I was able to catch up with one of our ND ERG team members, and he said to me, Bich, I think we're actually approaching this project like an engineering project. We're an engineering firm. We're just trying to apply engineering solutions. How about we think about this a little bit differently and approach it from a social change perspective? So we got together, brainstormed some ideas, and thought that maybe it's best to structure our ERG in terms of project streams. Have members nominate for a project stream that they're passionate about, and be very clear in those streams about the objectives, the stakeholders, the problem statements, some outputs, things that we want to implement and change, and how we're going to monitor how that needle moves over time. So it was a busy Christmas period. We spent that time doing that, and then we came into the new year with a fresh approach. You'll see there our mission statement is really supported by 3 pillars: the awareness stream, the social interaction stream, and the structural change stream. The awareness stream is very much, as the name suggests, it's raising awareness. What is neurodiversity? How does it look? What are the various forms? And we've leveraged internal chat and Yammer posts, as well as holding the national event. And soon we'll be sharing a video that we just finished creating last night. The social interaction stream looks at the interactions between people, ND staff, and their team leads and the business managers. And, you know, sometimes people need some training and skills and tools to tackle some challenging discussions. So that's what the social interaction stream is looking at. And finally, the structural change is around attracting and retaining neurodivergent staff. Where we're proud to be kicking off an internship program soon in Victoria, and then following through with other policies, changes that we can make just to make the environment a lot more inclusive. So I won't dwell too much on these next few slides, but it really shows you how we've tried to break it down. And this is really work in progress still. Each project stream team has ownership of their own stream, and they get to go in and they get to modify the actions and really lead some of the conversations in their stream. So I might just stop sharing now. So that really just caps off how we've really tried to restructure our streams and our approach. And I think a really important part of the discussion when people say to me, hey, Bich, I'm really interested in joining the ERG, how can I join? I make it a point to schedule in half an hour in their schedule so we can have a look and have a talk about the ERG, where we've come from, where we're going. And really the point of that conversation is to be very clear that this ERG is quite an active one. If you want to join our ERG, you know, of course, your support, we really appreciate it, but we also need people to take action and be empowered to make change and see some of those through. So at the end of the half an hour, there's no obligation for anyone to give me a response, but I follow up with them a few days later and I just ask them if they're still interested to be a part of the ERG, and if they are, which project stream are they most passionate about? People have said to me, you know, I'm not a comms expert, or I don't know much about policies and procedures. I don't know if I should nominate for those project streams. And my response is, it doesn't really matter whether or not you think you have the skills for it. It should be what you're passionate about, because this is, you know, extra things above and beyond our day-to-day job. And if you don't have the skills in the area, we'll find someone in the business who does, and they'll partner up with you and help you achieve some of those objectives. So very much as Alicia has mentioned, you know, you don't always have to have the skills to kick off something like this. It's been really rewarding to see our individuals in our ERG take real ownership and agency regarding the change that they want to see impacted and implemented. And it's been really rewarding for myself personally to see them harness their passion. We've grown the team nationally. We've had a national event at the end of May. I think we had over 800 people from across Australia join. As Alicia mentioned, we've connected to the North American ERG. All these things are fantastic. The most rewarding part of all of this is hearing the stories from our people. We've had, following the event, someone create a WhatsApp chat and connect across Australia a few GHD people who have synesthesia. And so they've kind of curated their own informal support group. We've then heard stories of ND people who want to disclose. So they've been contacting Alicia and just talking through some of the appropriate steps. We've had managers go to ND members who have disclosed in the past and say, look, I don't think I've been giving you the appropriate amount of support. What can I do? I have a better understanding of it now. Let's work together on this. So those stories are really powerful and really rewarding. And stories like Jack's has really noticeably empowered a lot of people within the business. So it's great to see. So in summary,
Thanks.
I guess I'll summarize with my three takeaway points. Is allyship is really important, and we should certainly champion that and encourage that within the business. Encourage the ERGs to be made up of neurodivergent and neurotypical, and empower, enable and harness the passion of your ERG members, because they're the ones that are going to affect the change. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Bich. We're running a bit behind, so I might put the link to the video you want to show in the Q&A so people can watch that. And I'll now pass to Nat to talk about her experience with the global IBM Business Resource Group. Over to you, Nat.
Thanks so much, Andrew. So IBM obviously has been around quite a while, and for over 100 years we have been embracing diversity, race, ethnicity, gender orientation, gender, sexual orientation and expression. So it really was kind of like the next logical step, the next chapter in the diversity story to think about neurodiversity. And a little bit of trivia, one of IBM's founding fathers, Herman Hollerith, who received his engineering degree at 19 at Columbia University in 1879, was understood to be dyslexic. He actually like jumped out of his school's window to get out of spelling tests, and I can completely understand that. And so it's really wonderful that, you know, one of our founding fathers actually was neurodivergent right then and there, you know, founding the punch card tabulator and really going forward. So it was kind of the next natural progression. Our BRG started in 2015 when two IBMers, actually one was at the United Nations for World Autism Day, found out what other companies were doing and was like, hey, we really need to be involved in this. And the BRG was formed called Autism as a Skill. And it was predominantly parents and caregivers of those who were autistic. And it just kind of grew. And in 2016, IBM signed a contract with Specialisterna to try to get some hiring going on. And in 2017, we had our first neurodivergent targeted hiring pilot in Lansing, Michigan. And it really just started to grow from there. By that time, we had over 500 members in our BRG. And in 2018, we rebranded as Neurodiversity at IBM to really encompass the wider neurodivergent persona. So dyslexics, ADHDers, and everybody in there. And we then continued to grow. In 2019, actually in 2018, we really worked to get more neurodivergent voices, to have more psychological safety, to have more people to have a voice to come out as neurodivergent themselves. And through that, we launched 2 safe space channels. So we do have a Slack channel for our BRG, that's Neurodivergent and Neurotypical Allies, but then we also have these 2 dedicated safe space channels. One is called actually Autistics, and the other one is called AND, actually Neurodivergent. So these are virtual communities where through the honor system, we have a couple of gatekeepers. You have to just be able to say, I'm neurodivergent, I want in to one of these known gatekeepers, and then you get in. So this provides that sense of support, that sense of psychological safety, which is so critical, but we really call them task forces because that's exactly what they are. We use these focus groups, or we use these groups of neurodivergent individuals to vet material, to steer of how we want to be represented. And our motto there is nothing about us without us. So through our BRG, we were able to get the attention of an executive sponsor and then additional people to create this hiring project that we have. We also have a 4th channel for neurodivergent caregivers and parents, and it's really working very well. IBM isn't as sorry, brain is buffering. We're not the first company to be, focusing on neurodivergent hiring, but what's exciting is that we are doing global enablement. So we have neurodivergent hiring pilots in 11 countries around the world, and we've educated thousands, over I think 3,200 IBMers have taken our Neurodiversity 101 class, and even more have at least had our 10-minute infomercial to at least start to understand what we're doing. And our concept that we have is the 3 A's. So we start at awareness, but awareness is passive. So you can be aware of what neurodiversity is, but since it's passive, like you can be aware that somebody new moved onto your street. That's awareness, but it's passive. So you have to start at awareness, but don't stay there long. Then we move to acceptance, where we actually want to talk and hear the voices of neurodivergence. And then going from there, the last A on our journey is advancement, where we're working to amplify our neurodivergent voices and have this motto of nothing about us without us, because who else is better to represent this community? And we do have to work with our allies to get our synergy, because we all live in this world together. So some of my key takeaways, and I'm trying to get us back on track, Andrew, is as you start your neurodiversity or your ERG it's so critical to get representation. It is wonderful to have parents and allies, but reach out wherever you can to find some neurodivergents who are willing to speak. Even if they're not in your community, you have to get that sense of representation. Think of it if it's any other ERG. If it was an ERG for women, you have to talk to women, or whatever your constituency is. The other thing is, remember, there's intersectionality here. So with a present rates of 1 in 20 people out there being neurodivergent, that goes across all other DEI factors. Because you could be men, you can be anything in there, and that's very important. Because through that, there's stereotypes that if you think of somebody who's autistic, you think of, a white cisgender male who's really good in IT, like, Sheldon Cooper from Big Bang. You don't think of a, Asian trans accountant, or, there's this dichotomy where either, if you say autism or neurodivergent, you either think IT savant, or you think somebody who has high support needs, and, focusing on what we can do to tell our story, to really work to break those stereotypes. And again, get that sense of representation involved. Like, I was recognized as neurodivergent in college. It was my aha moment when I realized I wasn't broken. But notice I don't use the word diagnosed. It was recognized. It's something that's part of me. It's trying to move out of this medical model into a social model. And this is only going to happen when we tell stories. So my advice for an ERG is to really just get going and be ready to course correct. IBM's, we have a whole playlist of videos, and we made one called What's It Like to be Neurodivergent at IBM? And we published it, and it didn't get a lot of positive reviews because people were saying, where's the neurodivergent voice? Who wrote this? And they were absolutely right. So we made a version 2. I helped script it, and we actually got neurodivergent IBM voices to tell our story. And it was a mistake, but we turned it into a win. You have to be ready for that course correct. And I think we're going to put that link to that 3-minute video in the chat as well. So I would say just start and be ready, fasten your seatbelt, and be ready for some bumps.
Thanks, Nat. Also like to see if you can talk a bit more, if there's any other advice that you'd like to give to organizations thinking about starting up a group. Now, you've said about just getting on with it, but are there any other thoughts you might have? And then we'll ask
I would say just network as much as you can. I'm on LinkedIn, and there are plenty of other companies that are willing to share best practices through Disability In. There's an employers roundtable, actually, where all companies that have a neurodivergent program been running for at least a year come together every month to share best practices. And these are like Microsoft and IBM and Dell, like sharing information. But then we also have like Rising Tide Car Washes and other agencies that are working, at a different at a different focus point. But reach out. I'm sure that you have local NGOs and local communities. Reach out to your schools. Try to get earlier in the pipeline, the better, because there's a ton of neurodivergents out there. And if they're not taught these self-advocacy skills and be willing to be proud of who they are, when they get to your company, you can have all the hiring targets or hiring programs in the world, but if the culture is not ready, the people won't want to stay. So it's really just opening minds and having people realize that it's not going to cost a whole lot of money. Other companies have already shown that you don't have to invest a lot of money. It's about opening your heart and being open to new ideas. And with that, you're going to get more innovation and more job loyalty and more revenue, which is something that companies always want to get to, that bottom line. Diversity of thought brings innovation across the board. So why not?
Exactly. And you talked before about the number of people that have gone through the Neurodiversity 101 training. And I understand that you've got a milestone coming up in a little while. Do you want to just tell us about that?
Sure. our original milestone was 1,000 people to take our Neurodiversity 101 training course that we work with Optimize for. And when we had that, I took an ice bucket challenge, and I'm sure it's on YouTube somewhere if you hunt for it. But our next challenge was 3,500, which would represent 1% of IBM's population at the time, which is really that 1 in 50 as autistic, and trying to represent that there. And one of my coworkers, Diane Delaney, she's up next for the ice bucket once we reach that 3,500. So her husband should start making some ice, because it's going to be ready.
Coming soon. Great, thank you. And over to Bich and Alicia. Is there any other advice you'd give to organisations thinking about starting a group, other than what you've already said?
I can try to take it, Alicia.
Yeah,
I mean,
thanks, Bich.
we have covered a lot of it already, and you know, we're totally on the same page with yourself, Nat, as well, and Andrew. You've been a great guide in the whole process. I just think, in general, leaders within a business, if you lead with your mind, your heart, and your hand. So if your mind has the vision of what the ERG or whatever the journey might be, if you can take others on the journey with you, communicate what that vision is, with your heart to remain curious and imaginative and work with your mind to curate this vision, but then with your hands to actually take action, to find the capability and capacity within your business to really champion a number of these messages and initiatives. So I think it is up to, you know, everyone can be a leader. And if neurodiversity speaks to you and you're passionate about it, find others within your organisation and really harness that potential. And that's my take.
Great. And do you want to talk a little bit more about maybe some of the programs and activities that you've got planned for the coming year to take this forward?
Sure. I'll talk to some of the, I'm in the awareness project stream, so I'll talk about some of the comms coming up regarding that. We've got a 12-month comms plan in place. So every month we'll either hit up some of the socials internally or externally and really keep the conversation around neurodiversity going. And that might be publishing success stories within our business, or interesting articles about, you know, pop stars and video makers and things like that. People might not have realised that they were neurodivergent. And we've got an upcoming video, as you mentioned, Andrew, you'll be posting that link in the chat, that is going to be played at our next global set of meetings happening next week. So, you know, again, just another avenue for us to keep the conversation going, re and D. And I wonder, Alicia, if you could have a chat to some of the other two streams around the training and the structural change.
Yeah. So we are working on rolling out training for different groups within the business. So for managers, for people teams, recruiters, and so we're currently working on that. We're also looking at an internship program. So it's been great working with La Trobe Uni to get that off the ground, and yeah, so there's so much going on, and so many avenues to get involved, and it really is about asking the questions and getting support. I haven't been knocked back for a request yet, so I know it is about just asking the question and driving things forward, but yeah, it's just been amazing to see what the ERGs achieved in such a short time.
Yeah, I would only add to just start having those conversations and having that open, candid feedback. If you do speak to a neurodivergent, you're going to get an answer you may or may not like. Many of us, me included, have trouble with filters. So just ask the question, and ask not that question of like, what accommodations do you need? Again, that's moving away from the direction we want to go to. Why not just ask the simple question, how can I help you succeed? And just make it more human and remove that need as much as you can, because trying to get a diagnosis in many countries can take years. Either you don't find the right doctor, or you can only find a doctor that works with children. And if you can't get that golden ticket of a diagnosis, then you can't get the accommodations. Or trying to fill out those forms to get what you need. Whereas you could have a candid conversation with your manager and say, listen, I can't sit near the elevator because I'm hearing that bing all day long. Can I please sit someplace else? Or just having, verbal communication and clear social contracting, little things that say, if you come by my desk and say, hey, can we need to talk. The next 3 hours, my brain is going like, oh my God, what did I forget? But if you can explain that to your manager and just be like, when you do that, that causes me a lot of anxiety. So can you just say, can we talk about this? Then I can be more effective during the day. And, maybe just coming into the office or after COVID, 30 minutes later, so you don't have an exhausting commute and you could enter the office with a full battery ready to go. These things don't cost a lot of money. So why are we putting the burden on the individual?
Yep. Thank you. And Nat, there's a question that's come through the Q&A and it's getting a lot of votes. It's asking about whether we're aware of any accredited autism-friendly consultants, if there's some sort of certification that you've ever heard of out there, some sort of educational qualification that people can do to get a certification to be a consultant who's focusing on making these things work. Have you come across that?
I really haven't. We do work with Specialist Erna and also with Rangam, some other NGO. We're working with them now in India. And every country has its own different quirks. But I would really, in my personal opinion, it's not about the accreditation. It's not about going to school, because you have to have that lived experience. You have to talk to that individual. You could have a PhD in psychology and be an expert on autism, whatever. But if you're not autistic or you're not neurodivergent, how can you express that? It would be like, going to get a degree in sexual orientation studies, or in any other DEI factor. It really goes back to like, do you go to a doctor to find out that you're whatever, Asian or Latino, or, this is who I am. Why does, we need to have an expert? And I think accreditations are good, but in my experience, some of those, and maybe I'm a little jaded, but some of those doctors and experts haven't actually talked to enough autistics, or they become very pedantic and want to speak over us because they know more. As I mentioned, my son is also proudly autistic, and when he was 6, the local schools basically told me to put him away, like move him into a residential facility, throw away the key, let's just move on, and not on my watch. And I think being neurodivergent helped me, because we can be very persistent at times. Okay, maybe a little more than persistent. And he's just graduated Carnegie Mellon. He's now in Europe as a freelance blockchain developer. He's interned at SAP and IBM, and even Facebook. And though when he was in university, when he was going through this internship fair to find these internships, he had to, put on his scratchy suit and have his resumes in hand and go down to the gymnasium where they have 300 little booths and you're supposed to navigate this. And he waited in the queue for an hour, pre-COVID, obviously. And he finally got in, and it was so hot, it was so noisy, he actually got sick in the nearest trash can. It was too much sensory information. And he called me and he's like, Mom, I'm never going to get to talk to these people. And it was like just as discriminatory if there was no elevator to get in. because it was too hot, it was too noisy, it was too crowded. He was not going to function in that environment. He's a penguin, right? He's not going to do well if you put him in Hawaii. That's not his environment. So the solution was to reach out to those individuals and say, hey, I want to talk to you, but I'm autistic. I can't get to you. Can I bring you a coffee during break just to get a couple of minutes of your time? Or can I help you carry your things back to your car? And having that self-confidence was like, wow, I want to speak to this kid. But all of those hurdles that we put in, the sensory stimulation, the not being able to succeed, and not having to need to mask and hide who you really are. We think of sensory stuff like, back when we went to the movies and you would eat popcorn at the movie theater and it would get stuck in your teeth, and you can't focus on the film because you're like, I need a toothpick, I need to clean, like that's all you can think about, or a rock in your shoe. So imagine trying to go through an interview like that with a bright light coming in, or the interview wearing very strong perfume, all of these things that set that person up for failure instead of success. So it's simple changes, and we just need to be able to be free.
That's a great story. I'm aware in Australia there's a Cert 4 in disability and there's a Masters in autism, but I agree with you. At the end of the day, you got to have that real experience, because it's, there's what you'll hear in lectures, but it's really getting out there and working with individuals and having that lived experience makes all the difference.
Yeah, and my son had somebody say, don't say you're autistic, say you have autism, and he's like, no, this is how I identify.
Yes.
I'm not a person with, toe fungus. Like, this is who I am. I should be proud and amplify it. And it was one of those experts that, learned in a book somewhere that that's the right way versus talking to people.
Thank you. And for Alicia, we've got a question from Anna Hinder. She's just asking, what can be done to improve awareness of neurodiversity in the HR profession? Many HR degree programs and HR professional associations are not including neurodiversity. Many HR practitioners can be less than helpful. Just wondering if you've got any thoughts around that.
Look, it's really interesting. I mean, I've been in the HR profession for 15 years and I didn't know what neurodiversity was. And I think that's the problem, right? Is that the awareness isn't there, and it should be. And it's about how can we influence organizations, maybe like ARI, who could really influence the industry. I think that would be a really important step. But I think it's, again, those people who do have the awareness is sharing that within the communities and businesses, and getting the support and helping to educate not only themselves but others. And that's what I did. And I think I started obviously with a very, very low base, and it's amazing like how much you can pick up from others. It's a big community, and I guess engaging with people. And I've done that just by talking and hearing people's stories and their experiences and learning from that.
I would piggyback on that and say move from awareness into acceptance, and swap it out with any diversity factor. Like, would we have Women's Awareness Day? Right? No, we all know what this is. It's time to step it up.
Thank you. And for Bich, we've got a question from an engineering lecturer. Autism in engineering work is the biggest hurdle, and what should we be prepping our students for?
I guess we weren't surprised when we have had a lot of people within GHD, which is an engineering design firm, come out and say, they want to disclose, and they want to tell people about it. I think the challenge for us as an organisation, as it is everywhere, is how do we create this psychologically safe environment for people to be themselves? Whether or not it's autistic or it's gender or it's sexual orientation, whatever it is, how do we cultivate that culture. And I know it sounds like a really wishy-washy answer, but that's the true litmus test. I remember having a conversation with Alicia after a few people approached her and said, hey, they wanted to disclose. I said, we're kind of at this pinpoint at the moment where if we get this wrong, you know, we're going to destroy everything that we've done up to this date. But if we can get this right, we're going to really change the conversations. Just like mental health has had a real boost from the whole COVID and pandemic experience, it's really changed the game for that space. And I think there's potential for us to be able to influence our environments, universities, workplaces, to do very much the same. It's not so much about neurodivergence. It's more about inclusion and diversity in all forms and all facets.
Okay, thank you, Bich. Just one last thing. We've had a question from RMIT University in Vietnam, and they're seeing an increasing number of students registering with the Equitable Learning Services who are neurodiverse. So they're wanting to set up a student group, and they're asking for any resources. So we've sent to them the link to the Neurodiversity Hub as a way of starting that process off. So hopefully that handles that one. But I'm now going to thank the panel very much for all your sharing. It was some very heartfelt stuff there. So thank you so much for really sharing your journey. It's very passionate, I think, is how you come across. And it's a great thing that you've done, and hopefully inspire others to do the same thing. But I'm now going to hand back to Orion. Thank you.
Well, wow. Andrew, I wish I could be a part of these conversations. I'm sitting here watching all these conversations, and they're just extraordinarily unbelievable and thought-provoking. So thank you so much. Thank you, Alicia and Bich, and thank you, Nat. I couldn't help but write down so many things that you said as an autistic person. I think you've said some extraordinary things and really important. And look, Andrew, thank you for your time as well. I think we can all agree you did a fantastic job. I think we'd also all agree that I should be moderating all these conversations from now on. But nevertheless, I guess the point I'm trying to make is, as an autistic person, and I'm super thankful for the thousands of people potentially neurotypical that are watching this video. But I don't want to wait for corporations to get into the right phase of their evolution for me to disclose or for me to be myself. I mean, I was born autistic. I'll die autistic. Awareness is passive. I agree. And getting your employees to put autism on their radar, I don't care. Look, and I don't want this to sound like a rant, but I think there needs to be significantly more autistic voices in this space. And I think the people asking about accredited consultants, I want to be very clear. I think you asked that in good faith, and I appreciate it. And I thank you for reaching out and asking that question. But the fact is, you don't need an accredited consultant. You need an autistic person who has lived experience being autistic. And I don't know the full background of people like Alicia and Bich. I know they're passionate and extraordinary, and I appreciate their time and effort. But I think we have to understand that there is still a difference between having a passion for learning self-defense and being mugged on the street and having to fight for your life, right? I mean, you can study how to help yourself not die when you get mugged in the street, but if you're getting mugged in the street every day, it's still different to learning self-defense. So I think it's very important we have to try and really intertwine all that in. I promise I am going to shut up now, but I'm not just passionate, I'm actually autistic. And I think it's really important that we understand that is the key here. And for the thousands of people watching, presumably I'm the only one that didn't understand the 2 million references to letters. But apparently ERG is an important thing. So that's good. Thank you guys for using letters instead of explaining it every single time. That was helpful. But I think what's really important here is we acknowledge allies are so important, and I love allies, and I'm sure Nat does too. But I think, an ally is a Robin. I'm not Robin, man. I'm Batman. I'm the Batman. You're the Robin. Okay, so the ally, the allies are important, but they're not Batman. I'm Batman. Okay, so I think we've made that very clear. I apologize.
I'm Batwoman.
Yeah, you're Bat. No, you're just Batman too. You're Bat person too. We're all Batman. I'm sure I'll be fired before tomorrow. I'm sorry, Andrew. I just had to make that clear.